In this lecture, we'll be dealing with composition and functions of Constituent Assembly of India. Actually, in the last lecture, I have given some hint towards the formation of Constituent Assembly, which was actually not conducive for having a constitution for the Indian mass. By the word mass, what I suggest, the peasants, workers, the poor, the middle class, and so on. So let's start with formation of the Constituent Assembly, how it was constituted and what was exactly its nature, so that we can better understand what was the deficit in this Constituent Assembly and what was the positives in this Constituent Assembly. Though to begin with the lecture, I must say it was the best possible solution keeping in view the situation of 1946. The Constituent Assembly was formed following the negotiation between the Indian leaders, both from Congress and the Muslim League, and the members of 1946 Cabinet Mission. This Cabinet Mission, I have already told you, that came to India to discuss on the issue of transfer of power. The Constituent Assembly was framed as per the arrangement recommended by the Cabinet Mission. What was that arrangement? 292 members were to be elected through the Provincial Legislative Assemblies. 93 members were to represent the Indian princely states and 4 members to represent the Chief Commissioners' provinces. So, total membership was 389. In June 1947, the delegations from Sindh, East Bengal, Baluchistan, West Punjab and Northwest frontier provinces withdrew. Why they withdrew? Due to the pressure created by the Muslim League for having their own state and to form their own Constituent Assembly. They held a meeting in Karachi. On August 15, 1947, the Dominion of India and Dominion of Pakistan, they became independent, and members of the Constituent Assembly who had not withdrawn to Karachi became India's parliament. So, Constituent Assembly for India started acting as the Parliament of India, which was to be a sovereign body following the independence of the nation. Only 28 members of the Muslim League finally joined the Indian Assembly. Later, 93 members were nominated from the princely states. The Congress thus secured a majority of 82%. In the previous lecture, I have already told that it has often been criticized as the Congress Assembly because of this huge representation of the Congress in the Constituent Assembly. As a result of the partition under the Mountbatten Plan of 3rd June 1947, a separate Constituent Assembly was framed for Pakistan and members of Indian Constituent Assembly were left for framing the constitution for India. Now, what was the seat distribution? The seat distribution was like this. Congress swept the general seats in provincial elections and the Muslim League captured most of the reserved Muslim seats. So, of the total 1,585 seats in the provincial assemblies, the Congress owned 925 or 58% of the seats, which was actually 85% of the non-Muslim seats. Hence, in July 1946, in the elections of the Assembly, League members own all but 7 of the seats reserved for the Muslims. So, in the Muslim seats, League members dominated. But as we have already discussed, that League chose to boycott the Constituent Assembly and they went for a separate Constituent Assembly and having a separate constitution. Socialists, they were also initially not ready to join, but however later on they joined. Why they denied to join? Because they felt that it was the creation of British colonial rule. However, they ultimately joined the assembly as they took it as the best possible option open in front of them. After then partition occurred, so India was partitioned. So what happened after partition? This arrangement was changed. This 69% of representation from Congress, it was changed. Why? The Muslim League members left the body, so it came down to 28. The Congress membership thus jumped to 82%. I have already told that Constituent Assembly for independent, divided India started with its work with 82% majority in the body. So, it was rather criticized, often criticized as the Congress Assembly, because 82% of the members of the Constituent Assembly were also the members of the Congress. Elections for 296 seats assigned to the British Indian provinces were completed by August 1946. The Congress initially held 69% of all the seats, while Muslim League held almost the majority of the seats designated for the Muslims. But following partition, the body was dominated by the Congress people. In the assembly, there were other representatives. Indian Christians had 7 representatives. There were 3 Anglo-Indians and 3 Parsis. After partition, minority representation was as follows: Nepalese 1, Sikhs 5, Parsis 3, Christian 7, Anglo-Indians 3, backward tribes 5, Muslims 31, apart from the Muslim League ones, because Muslim League members, they already left the body. Scheduled castes 33. So, minorities had 88 out of the 235 allotted seats in the provinces, that is 37% of the provincial membership. Though it is criticized that it was Congress Assembly, we must admit that Congress was not a party with one voice. It assimilated members of different castes and creed, having different values, having different ideologies. Jawaharlal Nehru, we can quote here, in 1939, what he said in Unity of India, page 139, that Congress has within its fold many groups widely differing in their viewpoints and ideologies. This is natural and inevitable if the Congress is to be the mirror of the nation. Actually, there was no other option but to make or accept Congress as the mirror of the nation, because there was, I have already discussed that there were 2 major parties, one the Congress and the Muslim League. Following partition, Muslim League left, so Congress was only there to play in the battlefield. One thing is always there with Congress: it always gives importance to the senior members, as it did in the formation of the Constituent Assembly. Senior members, they were given importance. There were 6 past and present Congress presidents. Who were they? Mainly Jawaharlal Nehru, Babu Rajendra Prasad, Sardar Vallabh Bhai Patel, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. They were party's top senior leaders. Apart from this, Congress invited Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a well-known legal expert, to be the chairperson of the drafting committee. B.R. Ambedkar was not the member of the Congress, rather he was the opponent of the Congress party. But he was invited to be the chairperson of the drafting committee. There were some other members like Kanailal Munshi, Purushottam Mavlankar, Shama Prasad Mukherjee, and so on. Of course, Congress incorporated many prominent women leaders like Sarojini Naidu, Hansa Mehta, Durga Bai Deshmukh, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, and Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, and so on. Dr. Sachchidananda Sinha was made temporary president of the Constituent Assembly when it met on December 9, 1946. Thereafter, Babu Rajendra Prasad, he became the president of Constituent Assembly. The vice president of the Constituent Assembly was Professor Horendra Kumar Mukherjee, a former vice chancellor of Calcutta University and a prominent Christian leader from Bengal. He served as the chairman of the Constituent Assembly's Minority Committee. He was appointed governor of West Bengal after India became a republic. Eminent bureaucrat and jurist Sir Benegal Narsing Rau, B.N. Rau, was appointed as the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly. He had a very important, significant role in framing or drafting the Constitution. He actually prepared the original draft of the Constitution and was later appointed a judge in the Permanent Court of International Justice, the Hague. What was the state-wise membership of the Constituent Assembly as on 31st December 1947? India had already been partitioned. After that, on 31st December 1947, it stood as follows. From provinces, there were 229 members who represented the Constituent Assembly. From Madras, 49, Bombay, 21, West Bengal, 19, United Provinces, 55, East Punjab, 12, Bihar, 36, Sipi and Berar, 17, Assam, 8, Orissa, 9, Delhi, 1, Ajmer and Merwara, 1, Coorg, 1. There were Indian states, till then there were Indian states. 70 representatives joined Constituent Assembly. All total, there were 299 members. Now, we will shift to how Constituent Assembly started its work. We have gone through the composition of the Constituent Assembly. Now, we will look into the work process of the Constituent Assembly. We have already mentioned the Constituent Assembly consisted of indirectly elected representatives, and it was set for drafting a constitution for India. On 9th of December 1946, Assembly met for first time. The last session of the Assembly was held on 24th of January 1950. Over this long period, that is 2 years, 11 months and 17 days, Assembly held 11 sessions, sitting on a total of 166 days. Of these, 114 days were spent on the consideration of and discussion on the draft constitution. What was the hope behind the Assembly's work process? In the words of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first task of this Assembly is to free India through a new constitution, to feed the starving people and to clothe the naked masses, and to give every Indian the fullest opportunity to develop himself according to his capacity. Elections for the seats were held and Constituent Assembly came into being, and in the first meeting 207 representatives were present, including a very good number of women representatives. The Assembly's work was divided into 5 stages. 1. Committees were asked. First of all, there were number of committees. These committees were asked to present reports on basic issues. What were these committees? Like Fundamental Rights Committee, United Provinces Committee, apart from the Drafting Committee, Committee on for discussion on federal issues, and such many other committees. There were almost 13 committees and few subcommittees. These committees were asked to present reports on basic issues. 1. The Constitutional Advisor, B.N. Rau, prepared an initial draft on the basis of these committee reports and his own research into the constitution of other countries. Indian constitution incorporated many things from the Western constitutions, for which it is a matter of doubt whether it could properly address the very indigenous problems of India. In the third stage, the drafting committee, chaired by B.R. Ambedkar, presented a detailed draft constitution that was published for public discussion and comments. Public discussions were held, comments were invited, but critics argue that these were not at all incorporated in the constitution itself. Even in the debates, Dr. Ambedkar was often criticized for having his bossing approach. In the fourth stage, the draft constitution was discussed and amendments were proposed and enacted. Finally, the constitution was adopted. The committee of experts led by the Congress party, called the Congress Assembly Party, played a very critical role in this respect. Let us highlight some important events. December 9, 1946, first meeting. In this meeting, Muslim League demanded a separate state. In this meeting, Dr. Sachchidananda Sinha was elected as temporary president of the Assembly. December 11, 1946, Constituent Assembly elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad and H.C. Mukherjee as President and Vice President of the Assembly, and B.N. Rau as the Constitutional Advisor to the Assembly. December 13, 1946, Objective Resolution was introduced by Jawaharlal Nehru, and in this Objective Resolution, he laid down the underlying principles of the Constitution. On January 22, 1947, Constituent Assembly unanimously adopted the Objective Resolution. May 1949, it ratified India's membership of the Commonwealth, again a sign of India's non-sovereign entity. On July 22, 1947, Constituent Assembly adopted the national flag. On January 24, 1950, Constituent Assembly adopted the national anthem, national song, and elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the first President of India. As the deliberations continued, I have already told that the arguments were reported in newspaper and the proposals were publicly debated. This assembly, along with its several committees like Committee on Functions of the Constituent Assembly, Fundamental Rights Subcommittee, Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee, Drafting Committee, and etc., they they completed their work, and in the Objective Resolution, which was already proposed, it culminated in the framing of the Constitution of India with all its features and guidelines to rule the nation in future. On January 26, 1950, the Constitution took effect, a day now India commemorates as Republic Day. At this point, Constituent Assembly became the Provincial Parliament of India, which continued its existence until the first election was held under the new constitution in 1952. When the Constitution of India came into force on 26 January 1950, it repealed the Indian Independence Act. India ceased to be a dominion of the British Crown and became a sovereign democratic republic. So, despite all limitations, all problems the Constituent Assembly had to face, it actually gifted us a constitution for the independent sovereign nation.